In my family, you graduate, you're expected to get married, and then you're supposed to have children. My parents had me, and they gave me my father's name. Now when I look back, I realize I had a lot to live up to, being named James Edward Bentley III.
Well, to be named after my father, which was a name chosen by my grandmother and my grandfather just for him, and then he thought well enough of his name to give it to me. To me, it was an honor. I thought, you realize it later on, but and that's why I gave his name to you.
Growing up, I was always told stories of how hard my grandfather worked, running dry cleaners all over Atlanta. My grandmother always would remind me of how proud I should be to have that name. And I am. See, my grandfather, James I, he didn't have a college education, so he had to make up for that with work ethic.
When I was a kid, I thought the sun revolved around him, and nothing he did was wrong. So when he went to work, I wanted to go to work with him too. In one of the plants he had, they had a huge grease pit in the back that, it would take the water and filter it. He would pay my cousin and I like $50 to go out there and clean the goop out of the bottom of the pit. It stunk like crazy, but $50 to 8 or 10-year-old kid was a lot of money.
Everybody in the family I know spent a lot of time at the cleaners, the different locations they had. I know my great-grandmother did, and I know my grandmother definitely did, in addition to taking care of her 7 kids.
Dad was a breadwinner, and mom was the housekeeper and the family nurse. Oh, friends would have birthday parties, and I couldn't go because we didn't have the money to go buy them a gift.
So my father would later go into college and work 3 jobs to pay his own way through because his parents definitely didn't have the money for it, but they insisted he had to go to college.
I remember not throwing the last bit of bacon away, even though it didn't smell good. I cooked it extra. I kind of like would burn it, cook it extra crispy so it would be okay.
So finally, when my dad graduated, he married my mother. They had known one another since high school. My mother told me that the first apartment they stayed in was so many roaches that she had to turn the light on before she got out of bed. But it's what he could afford.
Your mom and I probably, rather than looking ahead and trying to prepare for us to be able to retire, we preferred to give to you guys, so you guys would not do without.
Growing up, my dad always took care of us. He was always around. It sounds cheesy, but he was really a great dad. I had friends whose dads weren't. He was always working hard. He earned every penny, and we were always his biggest concern.
Okay, you happy?
I know he didn't want us to have what he didn't have. And that's what hurt the most. When he was laid off after September 11th, just 6 months before he was eligible to retire.
You just started school, so you made the third kid I had in college. And they came to everybody's offices and one at a time and brought them into a conference room and handed them a package and said, the economy is bad. And it was 15 days after the towers fell. And they told everybody they had to cut back on resources. That's part of managing what was going on.
Of course, he eventually got back on his feet after a year and a half of moving from job to job. Of course he would, considering the way he grew up. But unfortunately, the economy was screwing up again now. To be safe, He took a job opportunity but required him to never be home anymore around my mother. And he's doing it just because he wants to retire. And it hurts me to see the man who I think the sun revolves around be put in the situation that he is. And that's why I always sign my name, James E. Bentley III.